You know, does it make you more empathetic? Does it make you more moral? Well, some of the studies have looked at the artists themselves and said, well, if art is supposed to make you a better person, then the artist should actually be better than average people. Are they? No, I don't think so. Actually, the inverse. Artists tend to be, more socially crazy, or depressed, or antisocial, or they have more divorces, or they have more addictions, they have more problems. They tend to. And yet, all of us probably have had great experiences. We've been touched by art, where it doesn't matter who the artist was, what they did to make it, if they're a wonderful, godly Christian person or not. It actually affected us. We have that experience, and they can't take that away from us, okay? A great scene that comes to my mind on this idea from this powerful movie about Johnny Cash and June Carter, the movie called Walk the Line. And so this little scene that you're about to see is where Johnny Cash is auditioning for Sam Phillips. And he's singing kind of the standard gospel tune, and he's talking about how great it is to be saved. And see what happens here. Ladies and gentlemen, Johnny Cash. And so, yeah, we see in that clip that, Johnny is challenged, I don't believe you. And that opens him up. He's able to now actually be himself and to reveal what's going on inside himself. And he ends up singing this song he wrote, The Folsom Prison Blues. And this is the transition in Johnny Cash's life to the man in black, this guy who identifies with the downtrodden, this guy who, only person that would go in jails and do shows in jails. And he became known as a devoted follower of Jesus, and yet he was right there in popular culture. He was great. That's what sacrament to me is. I think it's about facing what's real inside of ourselves and offering it to the world as art and believing that there's redemption in what actually is. But it's hard to justify that in utilitarian terms, Maybe that's why it's sacrament. Maybe why this would kind of go along with worship more than preaching. Now, Protestants have had some suspicion about engaging in culture and engaging in art. There's extreme examples like the Amish, who take the Bible quote to be separate, and they say, okay, we're going to be completely separate. We're going to be cut off from culture because that's evil. We're going to be away from there. And so there's been like this controversy, in the Christian faith. Is art good? Is art bad? Or at least there's been a controversy lately. For the first 1,500 years, there wasn't any controversy. There was, the church, and it was a wellspring of arts. There was these great mysteries and songs and, these cathedrals being built. And there was, all this great stuff coming out of it. But then the Reformation happened. There was this backlash where I think what they got it from was more from the Old Testament than from the New Testament. So Protestants, for example, said, maybe we got to take the Ten Commandments really seriously, where it says, do not make a graven image. And they say, well, a graven image, that's any picture or art that kind of is showing a person. And that's worshiping creation rather than the creator. And so there was this movement called the iconoclasm, where they would kind of go into churches or go into buildings and destroy art and vandalize the place and kind of tear it all down. And then you would have churches built with this mindset, like the Puritan churches here in New England, where they're all white, right? The absence of color. And the only images there were a bare cross. I think this, again, is from the Old Testament, where the mixing of followers of God with a broader culture was a really bad idea. It was compromising with the world. It was going to corrupt a godly person. It was the kind of thing that would cause you to leave your faith behind and make you start sacrificing babies and all kind of awfulness, right? And it made sense. It was actually consistent with the Old Testament message, where there was this story of this small nation, Israel, and they were, for no reason of their own, it's just kind of God's discretion, they were picked to be representing God to the world. And so the initial goal was that they would stay pure, and that would kind of be a sign about who God is. And people kind of look at them, even though they're amongst all these kind of ungodly people, is like, wow, this is what it means to be a godly person. And so if they would mix with culture, then that would be the death of their whole goal. That would be a compromise. But by the time the Old Testament's coming to the end, you could see that was just a temporary time. That was kind of changing. There's all these hints along the way about God being a God not just of the Israelites, but God of all these other nations, all of these ungodly nations, of the whole world. And so, it definitely came about, it's really clear when Jesus came. Whenever, it said Jesus was the light to the world, light to the nations, rather than the light to Israel, which I think some people might have thought, oh, no, he's there for Israel. No, he's there for the whole world. And so we get this story of the New Testament where, Jesus commanded his followers to disciple the nations, to help the nations, to kind of, plunge right into the world and kind of be a part of culture, be a part of the world, and help people from all kind of different backgrounds. And this was originally, kind of tough for these Jewish people who kind of had a sense of, oh, I need to be separate, but now I need to kind of plug in with all the people around me. But, it did happen. So we read in the book of Titus where the Apostle Paul, one of the main writers in the New Testament, he's quoting one of their local philosophers from Crete. He's saying, I've read your philosophers and they have something to say. There's some good stuff there. That would have been unheard of in the Old Testament. But at this point, no, it's like part of how we kind of connect with people. We're doing a series here at the Woo called Get Fit. We're in the middle of it, and we've been kind of talking about all the normal kind of ways we could get healthy in this new year. We could get healthy physically, and so some of us are exercising every morning here at the church, and you're welcome to join us, P90X. It's a lot of fun. Some of us are walking on Sundays. We're talking about get fit relationally, get fit financially, get fit mentally, and all these kind of different things. I thought it'd be fun to kind of throw in this wild card about get fit creatively. How can we talk about art in church? And I did this because, for one, I listed at the beginning, there's a lot of you that are already engaged in art in this world. You're creative people. And in fact, maybe more of you, maybe all of you would consider yourself artists in the sphere that you're in. You're creative in the way that you dress, or the way that you eat, the food that you eat. Maybe you're creative in the way you drive, God forbid, or you're creative in the way you update your Facebook status, or whatever it is. You're creative people. I think it's true that all of us are artists. All of us are culture makers in one form or another. Why might that be? I think if you look back at the beginning of the Bible, Genesis chapters 1 through 3, I think we get some ideas from there, where it's the story about the creation of the world. And so God is described as someone that creates things, and then he invites us to do the same types of things that he does. And so he brings order out of chaos, and then we get to cultivate a garden. Right? And he speaks things into existence, and we get to name the animals, right? Those kinds of things. And so J.R.R. Tolkien talks about this with this philosophy where he calls humans sub-creators.